The first one stops most people cold when they hear about it. It is called the Hopi Lima bean, not the soft, pale lima bean you push to the side of your plate. No. This one is deep purple, almost black, with white swirling patterns on its shell. It looks like something painted by hand. The Hopi people of Arizona grew it in dry, sandy soil that most farmers would look at and just walk away from. It needed almost no water. It fixed its own nitrogen into the ground. It made the soil better just by growing in it. And it tasted rich and earthy in a way that modern lima beans simply do not. We stopped growing it at scale. We replaced it with a bean bred for size and color and shelf life. Not flavor, not resilience. We traded genius for convenience, and we are still paying for that. Now let us head north. Up into the Great Lakes region, the wild rice fields stretched for miles there. Not the cultivated wild rice you buy in a box today. This is Manoomin, the real thing. Anishinaabe communities harvested it by canoe, knocking the grains loose with wooden paddles in a rhythm that sounded like rain. It was not just food, it was sacred. It was a way of life. Today, Manoomin is disappearing from the lakes that cradled it for 10,000 years. Climate change, invasive species, industrial runoff. The lakes are warming and the rice is retreating. Some communities are fighting hard to bring it back. Their struggle is quiet and mostly ignored, but the stakes could not be higher. Oak. Wait until you hear about this next one. Deep in the Ozarks, Cherokee farmers grew something called ramps. You may have seen trendy restaurants charging $12 for a small plate of them. But long before they became a foodie obsession, ramps were survival food. They are wild leeks, pungent and powerful, one of the first green things to push through the cold ground in early spring. When winter stores were running low, ramps showed up right on time. They were medicine too, rich in vitamins that winter diets lacked. The Cherokee knew exactly when to pick them, exactly how to prepare them, exactly how much forest to harvest so there would always be more. That kind of knowledge took generations to build. We are still trying to learn it. Here is something that will shake you. Across the American Southwest, Pueblo farmers grew a type of corn you cannot find in any grocery store. It is called bloody butcher corn. When you shave the kernels from the cob, they are deep, dark red, almost the color of dried blood. It is one of the oldest surviving corn varieties on the continent. It is tall, drought-resistant, full of antioxidants. And the flavor people who have eaten it say there is no comparison to modern corn. Richer, deeper, more complex. During the Dust Bowl, fields of conventional corn turned to dust and blew away. Old varieties like Bloody Butcher held the soil. They held the moisture. They survived. We had the evidence right in front of us. And we still planted the modern stuff. That is a hard truth to sit with. Let's talk about something smaller. The Tepary bean, tiny, hard, almost impossible to crush between your fingers. The Tohono O'odham people of the Sonoran Desert grew Tepary beans in one of the harshest climates in North America. Summer temperatures over 110 degrees. Rain measured in inches per year. And those beans grew. They thrived. They produced. When modern agriculture tries to grow soybeans or kidney beans in heat like that, the plants collapse. The Tepary bean does not collapse. It digs in. Researchers today are studying Tepary bean genetics because climate change is making large parts of the world hotter and drier. The answer to tomorrow's food crisis may have been sitting in a desert basket for 2,000 years. Pull in close now. This next one gets personal. The Cherokee purple tomato. Yes, a tomato. Deep red-purple skin, green shoulders, meet the color of bruised roses. People who grow it for the first time stand in their gardens and just stare at it. It does not look real. It looks like something from a painting. The Cherokee people cultivated this variety for generations before it was ever written down in any book. It is not just beautiful. It is intensely flavorful in a way that supermarket tomatoes have completely abandoned. Modern commercial tomatoes are bred to be uniform, easy to ship, long shelf life, tough skin. The Cherokee purple was bred for taste, for family, for the table. It still exists today, thanks to a tiny network of seed savers who refuse to let it go. If they had not held on, it would be gone. That should give all of us pause. The sunchoke, also called Jerusalem artichoke, was a staple food for dozens of Native American tribes. It is not from Jerusalem, it is American. Completely and entirely American. Lewis and Clark wrote about eating it on their famous expedition. It grows almost anywhere, requires almost nothing, and produces more calories per acre than most modern crops. It disappeared from mainstream agriculture anyway. Why? Because it is knobby, weird-shaped, difficult to peel. We chose appearance over abundance. We chose convenience over resilience. A theme is developing here, and it is not a comfortable one. Three sisters. You may have heard of this. Corn, beans, and squash planted together in the same mound. But most people do not know the fourth sister. Some nations grew a fourth plant alongside the three sisters Rocky Mountain bee plant, or beeweed. It attracted the pollinators that kept the entire system alive. It was also eaten as a green vegetable. It was medicine. It was dye. It was glue for pottery. One plant doing 5 jobs. Modern monoculture farming grows one plant doing one job and then sprays chemicals to do the other 4. There is something almost embarrassing about that comparison. Now for the one that no one expects. Groundnuts. Not peanuts. Not the kind you roast at a ballgame. American groundnuts. Apios americana are vine plants that produce small, nutty tubers underground. They taste like a cross between a potato and a peanut. The Wampanoag people ate them. Pilgrim settlers ate them after nearly starving their first winter. Those settlers would have died without Native American food knowledge. They owed their survival to it, and yet within a generation, they stopped growing groundnuts, stopped using what had saved them. The irony is almost too much to hold. The last vegetable on this list is the one that haunts me the most. It is called the Navajo spinach, or Rocky Mountain bee plant spinach. A leafy green that grew across the West, boiled down into thick cakes that could be stored for months. Trail food, emergency food, the kind of food that stands between a people and extinction. It is gone now. Not extinct, gone from our fields, from our tables, from our memory. It exists in journals, in old photographs, in the mouths of elders who remember hearing their grandparents describe it. That is all that is left of it. Here is what I want you to carry with you when you close this video. Every single one of these vegetables was developed by human beings who paid attention, who listened to the land, who passed knowledge down through stories, through seeds, through seasons, and generations. That knowledge took thousands of years to build. We lost most of it in about 100. Some of it is coming back. Small farms, seed libraries, indigenous-led agricultural projects, people who are quietly, stubbornly planting the old things in the old ways. They are doing it not for trend, not for a restaurant menu. They are doing it because they know something we are slowly, painfully learning. The future might just be buried in the past, and all it takes is someone willing to plant the seed.